Welcome, everybody, to the NFL Legends Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The NFL Legends Show is brought to you by the Sheridan Report. To check out them more, go to @Sheridan Report on Twitter or to SheridanReport.com on the internet. I'm your host for the NFL Legends Show, Mike Goodpaster, and today my guest was a wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, Seattle Seahawks, and Los Angeles Rams. Help me welcome to the show, Jeff Chadwick. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing good. Doing real good, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's great. I love to have guys like you on because I think people forget how good you were. I mean, over 400 receptions, 27 touchdowns, or actually 4,546 yards, 292 receptions. Let's just start from the beginning. Who were some of your early influences, football-wise, and when did you start playing?
Well, as far as, starting to play football, I actually started off in what you might call rocket football or, basically Little League football. Started in 5th grade, played for the local city team called the Dearborn Lions. And we had uniforms just like the Detroit Lions. I just thought that, just a youngster, I watched the Lions a little bit at that age and thought it was so cool to be able to have the same uniform. But anyways, started that. I had my older brother who played on the same team. He was a quarterback. I was like a running back / receiver. And my fondest memories were playing with my brother at quarterback. And, granted at that age, he was quite a bit taller than me. He was a year older, but he was much taller than myself. When he threw the ball, I remember one time he threw it in the end zone. It was probably about a 20-yard pass. Seemed like it was a 50-yarder, but it was only about 20 yards, and I'm looking for the football. And of course, the ball hit me right on top of the helmet, bounced up, and I couldn't find it, and, of course, didn't catch it. But, nonetheless, that's how I started playing ball, just playing Little League football.
All right, and you go to high school, and from what I saw, at least at Grand Valley, you were a great track athlete, too. You want to talk to us a little bit about your high school career?
Sure. I was a little undersized. I'll be honest, I was, a late bloomer, if you want to call it that. I had success in Little League and maybe my freshman year, but I recall my sophomore year in high school, my dad said to me, he says, Jeff, he says, if you play football this year, you're going to have to play with the varsity kids. If they're so much bigger than you, you're going to get killed. And he's saying, I don't think you ought to play football. And I said, well, then what am I supposed to do if I don't play football? He says, I don't know. Try something else. So my sophomore year in high school, I did not play football. I actually ran cross country. That was brutal, running cross country. I was a runner, track guy, but have to sit there and do intervals of a mile, take a 2-minute rest and run another mile, do that 5 times. It was brutal. And, we would have dual meets. And I recall one time my sophomore year, I actually made varsity team. So it was because one of our top guys were injured. So the next guy in line was me, and we're running this dual meet, and I came in dead last. And I remember I tried so hard to do well, but I came in dead last. And after that year, I stuck it out for the entire year, but I knew after that, I really missed football. So my junior year, and of course, I ran track and was playing basketball as well. And I noticed in basketball, now keep in mind, it was back in the day. So we're talking about, in the later 70s. And old school coaching, I was at a private school, Catholic school, Dearborn Divine Child. And, as far as playing basketball, I mean, I was pretty good and, knew my teammates from grade school and then on to high school. And most often when you went to a school like that, you pretty much went from first grade through eighth grade and then on to high school. So you did all your schooling at the same school. Yeah. And I recall the coach cutting a lot of my teammates who I thought were better than the guys that they kept. And it was frustrating, seeing the guys that should be on the team that for whatever reason were cut for what I thought were lesser talents. But in any event, I took the summer off. I was running track and field, and my sophomore year, it took me into the state, finals or whatever for the high jump. I was a decent high jumper. I think at the time I was jumping about 6'6" or 6'5" or something like that, which I guess qualified me. So it took me into the summer after school, and a few weeks into the summer. Once I completed that, I knew that they were starting up summer basketball, and I thought, I'm just going to take a little break. I'm not going to do summer basketball, at least for the beginning. I'm going to take a couple weeks off. So I did that. I went up north, where I'm currently at now, in northern Michigan, and came up here for a couple weeks, and then went back downstate, and decided I'd start going to summer basketball. And the coach said to me, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, just showing up for summer basketball." He says, "Well, you're too late. We started 2 weeks ago." I said, "I know, Coach." But I said, "But, I was running, track, and, I just finished up with track. I didn't want to start anything. I wanted to take a little break." And he said, "Well, you're not participating this summer, so you're welcome to try out next year, but you're not being a part of the program." And I just said, "Okay." So I said, I guess basketball isn't in the works then, So I moved on. So
go ahead.
So what I was going to say is that, I put my focus basically at that point at trying to make the football team and continue track and field. So,
what happened between the sophomore and junior year? Did you get a growth spurt, or I know you started playing
a little bit of a growth spurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of a growth spurt, but I went to the head coach and said, "Hey, Coach, I'd like to try out for the football team." And he says, "Well, I don't know if I'm going to let you." And I said, well, why not? And he's like, "Well, I think you're too small." And he says, "I'll tell you what." He says, "You get in the weight room, and I'll assess you in a couple weeks." Now, I'd never lifted weights before, prior to that. So I'm like, okay. So went in the weight room and started lifting some weights. And a couple weeks later, I met with the coach again, and he says, "Okay, well, you've improved, so I'll let you try out." So my junior year, I'm on the football team. I'm, basically practice with, my teammates and that, but I never see the field. Never see the field at all. And I felt like I, was probably better than some of the guys, my teammates, but the coach just wouldn't put me on the field for nothing. Didn't matter. But I practiced hard, and I had, coaches that were working with me, just every day, just trying, just being a part of the team. Well, that coach at the end of that year, he ultimately went to Eastern Michigan, so he left our program, and we got a new coach in, Mike Hogan, and he was a Michigan State football player and graduate, and he became the head coach at Dearborn Divine Child. And next thing I know, my senior year, I'm on everything. I'm playing defensive back. I'm starting wide receiver. I'm deep guy on punt return, deep guy on kickoff return, and finally got to play. And I did pretty well. Well enough to where a school like Grand Valley or I had a few smaller colleges look at me and offer me a scholarship, and I just thought that was great to be able to continue to play football. Not too many athletes get that opportunity. And I was able to get a partial scholarship, not a full ride, but a partial. at any one of those schools. So I ultimately chose Grand Valley, actually because I had a brother that the same brother who was my quarterback in Little League was, like I said, he was much taller than me. He was 6'8", and he was on their basketball team at Grand Valley. So being familiar with Grand Valley, I thought, okay, I know it's out in the cornfields, kind of out in the sticks, but I knew that they had some good sports programs and a good business program there. So I thought, okay, let's try this.
All right.
So I went there.
I guess it's suffice it to say that probably going into your freshman year at Grand Valley, the NFL was probably one of the furthest things from your mind, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. No, listen, it was just a dream, just like any kid. You go to a few games, you watch them on TV, and it's you never think you can really make it, but of course, wouldn't it be cool to do it?
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it was with me. I never really thought I could ever play at that level. I was ecstatic the fact that I could play college ball at a small school.
Yeah, and you set a bunch of records there. You ended up being the first person, I think, inducted into the Hall of Fame. When during those 4 years, or was there a time during those 4 years where you thought, maybe I could do this?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because as I'm, just let you know, right now I'm 6'3", 225 pounds. Okay. When I came out of high school, I was 6'1", 6'1.5", 155 pounds. So I was just this tall, lanky, skinny kid. Never really lifted weights much, a little bit in high school. But as, I got into the college program, of course, just like anything, you have to up your game, and you show up to practice and you're actually practicing with, well-developed guys, I mean, they're 3-4 years older than you, and they look like full-grown men. And I'm still just a little kid, but, you have to up your game. They get you on a program where you're lifting more weights and you're training. And so I'm working out and I'm training, and, so I developed quite a bit. I probably gained 15 pounds my freshman year. You go stay in the dorms and you eat that food at the cafeteria, and you tend to gain some weight, and you're working out more than you ever have. So, you develop and you get a little stronger, a little faster. And I actually was able to find the football field my sophomore year at Grand Valley. So I got a little playing time. So that was encouraging, knowing that I could actually make it at that level and play at a relatively early age, as a sophomore. And then, so I just, when I was not playing football, I was running track. So I was like the only high jumper and the only long jumper at Grand Valley at the time. I also ran the quarter and the 200 and did the mile relay and stuff like that. But so if I wanted to high jump, I had to literally go into a room, pull out the mats. You know how big those mats are. They're big sections. I had to pull those out myself, and set up the high jump just to be able to practice high jump. But right. I did it because I enjoyed it, and I knew that running track and field was nothing going to but help me, develop and work on my speed and quickness and all that.
So what was your highlight at Grand Valley State as a football player?
The highlight?
Yeah, was there any one particular game or?
Well, there was a game against Ferris State, which has a great program, by the way.
Yeah.
Ferris State, they're Division II, but in fact, I think they actually played in the national title game this year. But they've always had a very strong program in all sports, actually. And I almost went to Ferris State, but Grand Valley was just as good. And I actually had a game at Ferris State where I had scored 4 touchdowns. I had 4 touchdowns. 2 of them were long bombs, and we pretty much destroyed them. So, being part of that was great.
When you got done with your college career, Was the NFL an option that you thought about there? Did you think you were going to be drafted? Did you get any feedback there?
Well, I'll tell you what. My junior year, actually, because I was playing. I told you, I mentioned that I'd actually played a little bit in my sophomore year.
Yeah.
By the time I became a junior, I was a starter, and had a pretty good year. But after my junior year, I actually started getting some letters in the mail. Just, basically form letters from the NFL, like Dallas Cowboys, Seattle Seahawks, Detroit Lions, Kansas City Chiefs, basically letting me know that they had an interest in me.
Yeah.
And that kind of blew me away. I was like, what? Is this like a joke? But I knew it was real because it had their logo on the envelope.
Yeah.
And then what I would do, this was after my junior year, so even though I was, playing ball, I would occasionally get, my dad had season tickets for the Detroit Lions, so occasionally I'd go to a game. And when I was at those games, I would look at the program and look at the size of the receivers, and I'd watch the receivers, and I would just watch them perform, just out there running routes, catching the ball, doing what they do. And I just thought to myself, I might be able to do this. I'm getting letters. They have an interest. I'm looking at the size, and I said, no, they're not too much bigger. I might be taller. They might be a little heavier. But I'm like, I might be able to do this. And then, when it came to after my senior year, I had a decent senior year. We did pretty good. We lost a few games, but we were contenders. At one point, I think we were actually ranked in the nation, but fell off and didn't even qualify. But nonetheless, we were a good program. Had a lot of good teammates, and I had worked out a few times for a couple of scouts. I never went to a combine or anything like that, but I did have a few scouts that would come in and work me out. And back in that day, they had 12 rounds in the NFL draft. Draft day came and went, and I wasn't drafted, but I was okay with that. I did have some teams, actually 5 teams, that actually wanted to sign me as a free agent. And I kind of evaluated their offers and looked at what their situation was with receivers. In other words, did they draft anybody? Who do they have currently? And I actually went to Detroit. They offered me the worst contract of all the teams. And the teams I had interested in me were Dallas, Seattle, Kansas City, New England, and Detroit. And Detroit offered me the worst contract, 3-year minimum contract. But it was, in my opinion, the best opportunity as far as making a team, because realistically, if you don't make the team, you're not making any money anyways.
Yeah.
So what is a contract really worth unless you make the team? There's nothing guaranteed, especially back then. So, and I also looked at it like, being that they were my favorite team, being from the Detroit area, I could work out at the Silverdome. Back then it was the Silverdome in Pontiac, where we had done our training, and I could live with my parents. So I would travel every day. Once I'd signed with the Lions during the summertime, I would travel from my parents 45 minutes to the Silverdome Monday through Friday. And I did that for 2 months prior to training camp.
Yeah, and if you look at the Lions back in, you had Billy Sims, but wide receiver was always an issue back then. And that was a solid Lions team, too. Ended up making the playoffs that year. You had Doug English, William Gay on defense. Very good defensive team. When you get to training camp as an undrafted free agent, what was the adjustment like going from Grand Valley State to the Detroit Lions?
Just like grade school to high school and high school to college, pretty much the same thing. Now you're with full-on grown men who have been training and working out, and they're as big as, as can be. It's the biggest they're ever going to be.
Yeah.
They're the best in the country. And I wasn't there, talent-wise or physically wise, maturity-wise. I'm just a kid fresh out of college, and these guys have been in the league for, 3, 5, 7 years. They've got a lot of experience on them. And probably not even really wanting me there, to be honest with you. What happens is you, as a player, you develop friendships. You have workout partners. You get to know their wife and family. And, it's a tight-knit group, as it should be.
Yeah. So
anybody new, unless you're somebody like a first or second or third round draft choice, unless you're proven or prove yourself, and everybody has to at some point prove themselves. They do, of course, all players want the best players on their team, but it's not an easy transition. And they're going to test you. And trust me, they did not make it easy on me at all.
Yeah.
Being a free agent walk-on, they'd prefer to have me in there for 2 to 3 weeks so that they get, some break time as far as, let this guy play when we're not playing, or we need a break to let him play. So it's a tough one to break into, and they're going to test you. So they're going to really put a lot of emphasis on showing you up, and they did. They did exactly that to me. I mean, I recall my first 2, and I'll have to tell you, nobody came in better shape than me in training camp. I worked out religiously. I worked out 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I was one of the first guys there and one of the last guys to leave that facility for 2 months. So I got myself in the best shape so that I would test well in the beginning of training camp. I was well conditioned, the best conditioned I'd ever been in my life, because I knew that the chances of me making it were slim to none, being that you're a free agent, especially a free agent after 12 draft choices.
Yeah.
Okay? They don't expect you to make it. You're basically called a camp body. You're basically there to spell the starters, the guys that are actually going to be on the team, to spell them when they need a rest. But I got myself in the best condition possible. And when I went to training camp and tested, I tested very well. I ended up running a 4.4 flat. I think I had the fastest 40 time for the 40-yard dash. And I tested. I was well conditioned. My track experience really came into play because I was able to outrun everybody, not only in the sprints but also in the distance. So when I get to camp, but hey, you're still not a football player yet. You might be in good shape, but you're not a football player, especially with this group of guys, right?
Yeah.
So I go to the camp. I put the pads on, and I line up, and you have your 7-on-7s, and you have your individual drills that you do in practice in the beginning. You're running routes with the quarterbacks, whatever, getting yourself warmed up. Then you eventually get into where you're doing 7-on-7, and you finish up with team. Well, that's when you're going against defensive backs, and you're in more of a game situational situation, okay? And I could not, they play a lot more man-to-man, in the NFL than they do even in college. So when you have a guy up in your face, and you got to get off that line of scrimmage, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
All right. And especially in the beginning of training camp, when you got a full-on uniform, helmet, you're not used to any of the padding, and you're out there in 100-degree temperature. It's humid. You got to get yourself in shape. And I'll tell you what, I think it felt like 2 weeks anyways, where I would line up, and if they came up in man-to-man, I couldn't get off the line of scrimmage. In fact, I recall being on the ground most of the time, where they would just knock my butt to the ground. And then that's kind of embarrassing because they're filming you.
Yeah.
And you can't even get off the line of scrimmage, let alone run around. And certainly the quarterback, once you don't get off the line of scrimmage, even if you were primary, he's going to his next receivers. But nonetheless, I did not give up. I kept working at it. And eventually I learned how to get off the line of scrimmage.
So let me ask you this.
And get up the field.
What's the key to getting separation, getting off the line of scrimmage?
Well, it's really just listening, reviewing film, getting yourself conditioned, and actually getting familiar with battling. You got to battle to get off the line of scrimmage.
Yeah.
So there's certain things that you can do depending on how the guy is lined up on you. So you if the guy's lined up, he's shading your inside, and that's typically what they do in man-to-man. They want to take something away from you. They want to force you to do the outside. So if you just release, okay, you're really not going to get into your pattern, because if you just release up the field and take what they give you, they're just going to, at that point, you make it easy for them. They're going to shove you for at least the first 5 or 6 yards. They're just basically shove you out of your route. So again, it's defeating the purpose of where you're supposed to be, where the quarterback expects you to be on that particular route. So the way you beat it is you have to attack their inside, what they're taking away from you. You have to take them on directly. So you have to go right at them. Once you go right at them, they kind of fall back on their heels a little bit. Okay. So now you're threatening what they're trying to take away from you, and then you give them a little juke. You do a rip, so you end up doing hand-to-hand battle with them to get their hands off you, so that you can go straight up the field. And you got to do it real quick. So you got to step at them, do a little shake. They put their hands on you. You do either a rip or an arm over, or you pull them past you, whatever you got to do. But you got to get into your route as fast as quick as possible. Get up the field. That way you're staying on track of where the quarterback expects you to be. Then you just run, whatever route you're supposed to run.
I think people fail to realize that right there is why a lot of guys that are highly drafted in the NFL never become as great as what people think they are, because they're these great athletes. It's always been kind of easy for them. And when they get to that level, everybody's a great athlete, and you got to be able to figure things out.
Yeah, and it's really about that. I mean, if you're not, it comes down, are you coachable or not? I learned a lot by not only the experience, but when I would get into the film room. So let's say you're doing 2 days. So you got two practices every day, whether you like it or not, unless you're injured. You got to get out there and battle with these guys. And when you're not in practice, you're reviewing film. They film everything you do. And your coach's job is to teach you, okay, while you're not on the field, so you can see exactly what he's talking about. And you basically just listen to him. And you also learn from the other guys that are out there. So you get all this learning off the field that you can then apply the next time you go out into the practice field and try the things that the coach has told you. Now, you see how he got you here? If you do this, okay, this might help you get back on track, So you just listen to your coaches and you watch what the coach, because trust me, these other players, other receivers are experiencing similar things, okay? They experience. So you watch your teammates, you watch how they do it. You watch how you're doing it, whether you're having success or not. And every day you just keep on learning more and more about how to beat, especially the man-on-man. Okay? And then, like for me, once I was able to learn that and actually get into my route, I found myself at that point able to run good routes. I was getting open all the time. So let's say, for example, the first week or so, if I'm in the play, the quarterbacks aren't even looking my way. They see me over there, they're going the other way.
Yeah.
Okay, because they know I can't get off the line of scrimmage, so why are they even going to look at me? They're going elsewhere. But once that they see in film that now I'm getting off the line of scrimmage and I'm actually open, the coach is going to tell him, you need to throw him the ball. Okay, so here it is. We're in week 2, and I'm open, and the quarterbacks are throwing me the ball, and I can't catch the ball. It's coming in too fast.
Yeah.
I get into my route, and as soon as I turn, the ball's already in the air. I don't even know where it is. And once I do see where it is, once I get my hands up there, it's going right through my hands. I can't catch the ball, but I'm open every time. So here it is. I figured out how to get off the line of scrimmage, how to run a good route, how to get open. Now I got to learn how to catch the ball. And so that's what I did.
Yeah.
So it's really a phase. You know, you got to take one thing at a time. You know, first thing is you got to know where to line up, what the play is, what the snap count is, where to line up. Okay, after that, now you got to execute from the snap of the ball every situation that you've been coached. You know, like almost like every single frame of you running that route to the point where you actually catch it. So I would say by my 2 weeks into it, all of a sudden I started catching the ball. All right, because I learned that this ball comes in a lot quicker in the NFL than it does in college. You know, in college, a lot of times you can see the quarterback throw the ball. Well, in the pros, because a lot of it's timing routes, you know, the quarterback's taking 5-step, 3-step, 7-step drops. You know, he's throwing in on timing. So you've got to be where he expects you to be. And if you consistently get an open, he's going to throw it to a spot. You got to make sure you get to that spot. Well, when I would come out of my breaks, okay, I would have to really learn to get my head around, you know. And the way you get your head around is to really force your shoulders to whichever way you're breaking. Bring your shoulders and head around, and first and foremost, locate that ball. And then at that point, you completely forget about everything else, and you concentrate only on that football. Okay, at that point, you just locate the ball and focus on the football, which, if you think about it, you have a lot of things going on. You got linebackers, safeties, you got the guy you're beating, you know, and they're all following the football too. Okay, they're reacting to the football as well. So that's not always easy to do. But if you focus and look at it that way, your main focus becomes now that football. You're not worried about any of the traffic or anything else around you because you're focusing on the football. And then you go after that football. And, you know, obviously, you know, in order to catch it, you got to look the ball all the way into your hands, which is another mistake a lot of receivers do is, you know, they see the football and they work so hard to do all that they do to get the ball thrown to them. And it's like that last 2 or 3 feet, you know, it's that slight little, I'm peeking upfield.
Yeah.
Or I'm turning my head slightly. I'm taking my eyes off it. And you know, you hear it all the time, see it all the time where guys will do that. And usually that's the reason they drop it. It's because they just that one little bit. Well, they're losing focus or they're losing concentration, okay, for that split second. So you got to program yourself to not lose that. And it's just a lot of practice, you know. You just got to continually practice daily from the time you put your uniform on and you're just warming up, catching the football back and forth with the quarterback, just warming up. You got to just focus on those little things that ultimately come into play as you having success in real time, you know. And ultimately, you know, I ended up catching the football and was able to, you know, consistently do it, consistent enough to, now granted, I did, you know, drop some balls, and most receivers do at some point or another, but I also had some success as well, so.
Yeah, you had a lot of success in that 1983 season. Being a Detroit Lion fan, you know, there's not a lot of success that happens there, and I can say that because I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan. But 1983, you guys started off 1-4, but you finished 8-3 to make the playoffs. What was the catalyst that kind of turned that season around for you guys?
Well, I'll tell you what I recall, when we lost our 4th game early on in the year, things were looking pretty bleak. And the worst thing when you're losing so much is to have to go in on that Monday morning and sit there with your teammates and watch that film over again. Okay, and it starts to get old when you're not winning, and you're having to go in there on Monday and watch yourself once again and your teammates once again not perform. It just becomes so negative. So I recall after that fourth loss, we came in on Monday, and Monty Clark was our coach at the time, and he came in the team meeting and he looked at us and he said, "Listen, normally we break it down into groups and we review the film." He said, "We're not going to do that. This is old news. We've done it. We looked at it. It hasn't helped." He says, "You know what? I think you guys' biggest problem is that you guys don't even know each other. You guys as teammates, and you've been in training camp, and many of you know each other's families, and you've played together. You really don't know each other. You don't know the other guys on the other side of the ball. You know, offensive guys, you don't know the defensive guys. Even though you go against each other, you really don't know why you're playing the game." He goes, "So I'll tell you what." He said, "Instead of reviewing this film," he goes, "why don't you guys go up to this little local?" We had this. It was just on the other side of the Silverdome, across the street. There was this little. It was a little bar. Okay, and we all went over there and spent. We had a few beers and we had lunch and we just spent a few hours. The whole team. Everybody had to go there. We just spent a few hours. Just kind of reminiscing, talking about things and just in small groups and together as a large group, just hanging out, getting to know each other.
Well, and
I think that was a pivotal point.
Yeah, and this is the thing. I had David Fulcher on the other day, played on the 88 Bengals, and I've probably interviewed like 30 guys from that team, including Sam Weish, and every one of them says the difference between 87 when they're in last and 88 when they're in the Super Bowl was the way they roomed together, because they started going offensive player with defensive player in training camp, black player with white player, and every one of them says you just develop such a bond that you don't want to let each other down.
Well, exactly. That's exactly it. You got to play for somebody other than yourself.
Yeah.
Some guys play for the money. Okay, let's be honest. Especially nowadays, money's so good now. Back when I played, when the money wasn't that good, guys could have other careers and probably make more money. Okay, but nowadays the money's so good. How can you not be playing for the money? But see, that shouldn't be the motivating factor behind, because that would be contrary to everything you've done since you were in Little League.
Yeah,
you got to have a love for the game first and foremost. See, back when I played, now hindsight's 2020. Would probably never say this, but I'm just happy to be here, playing at the highest level possible, being able to play with these guys, the best. Okay, the best in the country. I get to play ball with these guys. How fun is that? Was that really any different that if you were a good basketball player and you had an opportunity because they saw some talent, that they would invite you out to play basketball with a professional team? Hey, we want you, you know what, we like you. Just come on in. I want you to hang out with these guys, and I want you to train with them and get to know them and play some ball with them. How exciting would that be?
Yeah.
Well, it's no different. You have to have a love for the game and a love for your teammates. First and foremost. The money is secondary, and that'll come. But don't be worried about the money. Nowadays, you shouldn't.
And nowadays,
be more worried about your performance.
Yeah, nowadays, you look at a team like the New England Patriots with Tom Brady, and I've interviewed multiple guys that have played with Brady, and they said, you won't find a better teammate. They said, the 53 guys on the team, he knows everybody, who their wife, who their kids are. And if you look at that Patriots team, I think that's got a lot to do with how much success they've had, that they have a leader like that. And everybody actually is his friend the way it looks, because I've talked to probably 20 guys that have played with him, and they all come back with the same story. Said if it's the 53rd guy on the roster, said Tom can come up and start talking to him, asking him about his wife and kids.
And that stuff's contagious too. Okay. They see Tom doing it. Well, guess what? They're going to start implementing some of the things that Tom does. Okay. They're going to, just even if it's not really the way they'd normally be, and maybe they don't do it quite as often as he does, but they're going to be more likely to be more like that.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you don't have any of that, you got all the other teams in the league, right? Some of them got some of that stuff. I would have to believe quite a few of them have it. Obviously, the teams that are having success. I can't believe, because I think there's so much parity in the league, I can't believe that you have teams that can have a lot of success without that intangible right there.
Yeah, I don't think you can have that success, at least winning a Super Bowl, without having that at some level.
Well, I don't think you can make it to the playoffs. I don't even think you can get to the level of playoffs. Because, you might be able to come in possibly as a wild card
because
team,
I think
possibly.
We see teams like that less and less, which is why I think you get a team like the Patriots that can be there all the time, because they're one of the teams that has that and nobody else does. And you look at a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, all the talent in the world the last 8 or 9 years, they have not been able to beat that Patriots team. And if you look at the mess that they're in now, that's probably got a lot of reasons why the last 5 or 6 years the Patriots have knocked them out in the playoffs every year.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, the Patriots aren't known to be a team, nor is Pittsburgh, never have really been a team that, pay those huge salaries.
No.
They don't go for guys that want that. They don't go for guys who are in it for the money. I think that they probably spend more time than most teams in the league in evaluating players as far as getting to know who they are, what drives them.
Yeah.
They don't want a guy, and I can be honest with you. I'm going to tell you this because this actually happened to me. When I was with the Seahawks, I became a free agent. They were getting rid of Dave Craig, who was my quarterback, and I had a good relationship with him. Okay. They got rid of him. He was my quarterback. I was like, why are they doing that? Well, they had drafted number one, a new guy out of San Diego State. Anyways, they draft him, and I just didn't see where I was going to fit in very well with them. Okay, I didn't like the direction of the team. I was a free agent, so I knew, hey, I could possibly go somewhere else. I'm looking at my options. So in any event, Pittsburgh flew me in, and I went in and talked to Coach Cowher. I worked out for him. I actually worked out pretty good. Didn't run, at that point in my career, I wasn't running a 4.4 flat anymore. Even though I was doing all the same training, age had caught up to me.
Yeah.
A bit, and I was running more in the 4.55, 4.57 category. But I did have that experience, and he was looking for somebody like me. And he flat out asked me, Jeff, what would it take to get you here? And you know what I told him? Just pay me more money. Wrong answer.
Yeah.
Wrong answer. I was truthful. Okay, I had other teams that I could go to. I probably would have preferred to go to Pittsburgh and be coached by him. But he asked me what it would take. He wanted my answer. And when I came up with just pay me more money, I thought I was making it simple for him. It's not like I was making all that much.
Yeah.
But the answer wasn't the right answer. That's not what he wanted to hear. Not at all. I didn't figure that out till years later. But, and even though I'd played, at the time, 9 years in the league. Do you think I would have known a little better? I didn't, though. I don't think that was the answer he was looking for.
Yeah, but Bill Cowher was a hell of a football coach, and especially nowadays, there's a lot less of them than what there used to be. So probably with 20 guys in the NFL at that time, that answer would have been fine.
Well, possibly. That's not the answer he wanted out of me, though.
And he took them immediately to the playoffs in 92 also, if you remember. And that was after they had been pretty bad, 90 and 91. And that was his first year there. When we talk about that 83 season, what do you remember that playoff game? Because I remember Billy Sims scores a couple touchdowns at the end. I think you had 5 or 6 receptions. You guys miss a field goal. Eddie Murray never misses that field goal. What was that game like for you playing against the great Joe Montana, especially standing on the sideline with the lead and watching him walk the ball down the field?
Yeah, that was rough. But, you can expect that to some degree for him to be able to go up and down the field. I mean, our defense had played great that day. To hold them to, 20, 24 points or whatever they had, on their field. Our defense played well. They really kept us in the game. I think I recall what hurt us in that game, other than the missed field goal at the end. We had a lot of turnovers. I was surprised we were even in the ball game. I think we had 5 turnovers.
Yeah.
Okay. Rarely are you going to be in any ball game turning the ball over 5 times. Because that's a dagger. 2 times is a dagger. We turned it over 5 times.
Yeah, so, especially in a playoff.
I think
game.
Most of, yeah. On the road, and we were still in the ball game, and we probably should have won that game.
Yeah, but, I think you definitely should have won it. And since I was a Bengals fan and they beat us in Super Bowl 16, I was cheering for you guys. But right. The other thing I remember about that team was a really good team, but I think there was only one Pro Bowler, which was Doug English, who had like 13 sacks. But you guys had a great 83, but in 1984, Billy Sims goes down. Team was riddled with injuries. You get a head coaching change going into 85 with Darryl Rogers. And it had to be tough for you through those years, just the constant losing, especially when you're playing well.
Yeah. Well, it is frustrating, especially once you experience the kind of success that we had in 83. So all of a sudden go to, I don't know what we were, 4-12 or something like that in 84. To have such a big, you almost felt like, well, it was such a downer that we performed so poorly as a team. Regardless, I mean, and granted, I know a big part of it was losing, your best player, Billy Sims.
Yeah.
But still, I think the whole team was probably just extremely let down. They just felt like, oh, we ain't got a chance because we don't have Billy, and maybe that's true, but you've got to be able to throw your next guy in there and still maintain the poise that you had even with the best players. If you're going to block for them, you got to block for the other guy too.
Yeah. Because,
you've got to create something for whoever's in there, even maybe more so.
Yeah, you just got to block even better.
Yeah, you just got to even pick up your game. But the thing is, I know everybody, even myself, being a wideout, when Billy's in the game, when Billy Simmons is in the game, you wanted to have him break one open because it was so much fun to watch him run, and cut and maneuver and just give him an opportunity so you could see him just do a little bit more. Now, when you don't have that anymore, it's a bit of a letdown. But, but a team's got to overcome that. I mean, Belichick does it all the time. I mean, look how often he loses his top, receiver.
Oh, yeah. And then he replaces it with somebody that was even better.
It doesn't matter who he loses, and it doesn't matter how many of them. He's always got some other guy who's just been on the sidelines, maybe playing special teams, that comes in and does a good job.
Yeah.
They don't lose stride at all, ever.
Well, I think a lot of that is just because everybody around that guy is doing their job. Makes it a lot easier to replace then.
Well, I think what it is that he expects, no matter who you are, he expects you. There's no excuse whether you're a starter or not. If you're a backup on my team, you're going to know if you get called in, and I don't care if it's for 1 play, 5 plays, or it's for the rest of the game, or possibly the rest of the season, you're going to be prepared. Okay, there's some coaches that are just like that. Chuck Knox was that way. Okay, and that's probably why he coached forever, because he didn't expect anything but your best.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think what happens many times is that these players, these backup players that do get the opportunity, are kind of almost like shell shocked that they're getting in the game, and they tend to make a mistake. Not with Belichick though. His group of guys, they come in, they're ready to play.
Yeah, and
they're like salivating. Oh, I'm finally getting my opportunity. I can showcase now what I can do.
Yeah, and with you leave Detroit after one game, a trade, I assume, or
no,
or they release you.
They let me go, and again, different era, different times. They back then the league did a lot of things. Keep in mind, we didn't have the lawyers and all the stuff like you do when there's big money being thrown around. We didn't always have the best representation back then. We tried, but they're with my situation, not unlike probably a lot of other players in the league that dealt with this. It's generally a one-sided deal. It's usually for the team. The team does what they want to do. Okay. I sustained an injury. I broke my thumb catching balls out of the jugs machine, which I used to do all the time. But at that particular time, the Silverdome was under some kind of construction, or they were trying to save on the lighting or whatever. The lights were off in the Silverdome, and I was catching balls out of a jugs machine coming out at about, 50 miles an hour out of a jugs machine with the lights off in the Silverdome. So I misjudged the ball and took it on the tip of my thumb and broke my thumb.
Yeah.
And it was a week before the first game of the year. I was having a great training camp. In fact, coach was, I was having a great preseason. I was healthy, fresh, and everything. But lo and behold, a week before our first game against Arizona, I got a broken thumb, and I could still run routes and everything. I just couldn't catch the football, and I really didn't expect to play because as a receiver, I don't think I was in there for my blocking. Put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Most so, it was a run and shoot. They want to throw the football every play. So, but they started me. They started me. I couldn't believe that they started me. I was like, why are you playing me? I couldn't catch the ball in practice all week. You think that I'm going to be all of a sudden healed with a broken thumb? Usually it takes a minute, to heal. And you're like, well, you're starting. I'm like, okay. And I had my suspicions. I thought, there's something wrong with this.
Yeah.
To start me, the backup can't run the same route and at least he's got two good hands to catch the ball. But make a long story short, I went in the game, and, first game of the year at home against Arizona. I was having a great training camp. I go in there, Rodney Peete, who is a great quarterback, threw a great ball. No reason not to catch his balls, right?
Yeah.
Because he just threw a nice catchable ball all the time. Anyways, I go in there and I'm open, and I can't catch the ball. It's going right through my hands, like I hardly even put him up there. I hadn't there was no way I could catch it. I think I caught a couple balls, but I think I also dropped 3, and I probably would have dropped a dozen if they would have kept me in the game. But I'll tell you what, after I dropped 3 balls in I don't know the first quarter and a half, it might have been the first quarter. I was open and they were throwing me the ball. I would have had a field day normally. But I only caught a couple and dropped 3, and the fans were booing like crazy. I mean, they were booing. And then when the coach finally pulled me out of the game, they were cheering. That was embarrassing. But nonetheless, we lost the game. I go in the next day, and, the thing that the player never wants to hear is coach wants to see you grab your playbook. That generally means bring in your playbook. You're gone. Yeah. Say goodbye to your teammates. You're out of here. So yeah, I was cut. I was actually released from the Lions, and there was some bad press and everything. But the thing is, the reporters, they didn't even know I had a broken thumb. They were just dogging me that I couldn't catch the ball anymore, or that kind of thing, whatever. But they didn't publicize that I had a broken thumb. The team didn't let the media know that I had a broken thumb. They had no idea.
Yeah, and then you get to go to Seattle. That was Steve Largent's final year. Chuck Knox was the coach there. What was that like playing with Steve Largent for a little bit?
Oh, that was great. He was phenomenal receiver. I mean, the funny thing about that deal is that as soon as I got released by the Lions, Seattle called me the following day. They called me up and said, "Hey, I understand you got released by the Lions. I'd like to bring you up here and work out. Steve Largent went down. We need somebody to back up." And I said, "Well, that'd be great." I said, "Sounds great. I said, "I don't believe this is a good time for me to come in." And he said, "Well, what happened? Why did the Lions let you go? They didn't even know." And I said, "Well, I broke my thumb last week, and I couldn't catch the football in the game." And they said, "Well, we saw the film, and we saw that you dropped a couple, but you caught a couple. We didn't know you had a broken thumb." I said, "Yeah, I got a broken thumb. To be honest with you, I said, I can't catch right now. I said, I don't think it's beneficial for you guys to bring me in because I'm not healthy." And they said, "Well, how long do you think it's going to be?" And I said, "Well, it's been a week and a half now since I broke it. So my guess is with these type of injuries, they usually last about 3 weeks. So I'm guessing about a week and a half. I should be okay." And they said, "Well, I'll tell you what, why don't you give us a call when you're healthy?" So about a week and a half, my thumb didn't hurt anymore. I could finally catch the football. I called them up. They brought me out there, and I never came back. I stayed there and, was on the team. And to be a part of Steve Largent, well, he was amazing. Not the biggest guy, not the fastest guy, but he knew the game so well. He was like an orchestrator, He could run the whole team. He knew at all times what everybody was supposed to do. He would know on every play what the quarterback, the running backs, the receivers, the linemen are supposed to do on every play. The guy was a genius. Same thing with the defense. As far as reading defenses, he could read defenses as a wide receiver on the move, in motion. His mind was so brilliant. He would know exactly. In fact, he would sometimes run by me and tell me what kind of defense they were playing. Half the times I still didn't even understand what the defense he was telling me. He's calling out something, but I knew it was man. That I did get out of it, but he would break it down into, it's man, double on whatever. He would just rattle this stuff off, and I'm just like, oh my God, this guy is amazing. But yeah, and not only that, but he would catch everything. But when he was injured, when I came in and he was injured, I hadn't even met him yet, and even though I think he broke his elbow or something. He did something to his elbow. But anyways, he couldn't play. But when we would practice, he would be out there with an assistant the entire time we were out practicing. And he would be running routes, and he would just be running routes and catching the ball with one hand. Of course, he had no use of the other arm, but he could still run. He just couldn't use that other arm. But he didn't need to. He was just out there running routes and trying to catch the ball with one hand. And he would be out there the entire time we were just running routes and trying to catch the ball with one hand. Yeah, right. You're not going to get most guys out there doing stuff like that.
One thing that I forgot about was the fact that Chuck Knox, who was known for Ground Chuck, actually was running to run and shoot when you got there. And in 1990, the Seahawks start off 0-3. He abandons the run and shoot. You guys go on a run where you end the season 9-4, almost make the playoffs. You want to talk a little bit about that season? Because I know that season ended with you guys watching Cody Carlson come in to back up Warren Moon to beat the Pittsburgh Steelers on a Sunday night.
Yeah, that was disappointing. I mean, because we did what we had to do, to kind of finish out the year and have a chance, and that's all you can hope for in many cases, to have a chance to make it to the playoffs, and then, to be eliminated because of one game, last game of the year. That was a little disappointing, especially for me because, I'm in my final years, and I've only played in one playoff game. I mean, there's some guys that go to the playoffs every year.
Yeah.
And that's really what you strive for. Every year is to not only do well, as a team. You want a good indication that you're a good program and that you personally have done a good job is to make it to the playoffs. That's what everybody wants to see. Make it to the playoffs, because everybody knows that you make it to the playoffs, anything's possible, right?
Yeah.
You got a chance. You can win. To win your division, and then go on to the big game. So you're making strides. But to play as long as I did, and play in one playoff game, I was extremely hopeful. Wow, would this be great? And we did have a good team. I had some good teammates. I mean, we were clicking. And that's what you want to see at that time of the year. There's a lot of teams that may start slow, like we did in '83, start slow, but a good indication is when you start seeing teams doing well in November.
Yeah.
You're winning some of those. You're winning your home games, but you're winning some of those road games that nobody expects you to. That's a good indication.
And we've seen multiple teams in the past go 9-7, get in as a wild card, and end up in the Super Bowl. I know 1979, the Rams did it. The Cardinals did it with Kurt Warner, so it's not something that's completely out of the question.
No, it's certainly not. And, a team that's got momentum, is typically where you want to go, as far as in that direction.
Yeah, like the Eagles 2 years ago.
You're building on it.
Before this one. I mean, they...
Yeah, it happens. It happens. Yeah. It happens more often than you think. Now, granted, do they always make the Super Bowl? No, but it does happen, like you just mentioned. So it's certainly not out of the realm of possibilities, and that's why the goal is to get to the playoffs, and then anything can happen. You see how tight some of these ball games are. You don't see too many blowouts. Occasionally you'll see one or two, and some of that has to do with the lack of preparation. You got a team that has a week off, and the other team has to play in a wild card game, and they play great and they look great, but the next week they get blown out. Well, you'd be surprised what an extra week of rest and extra week of preparation can do for a team at that level.
Yeah.
So, home field advantage. Yeah.
Yeah. You retired after the 92 season. Was it tough to retire? I mean, was there any problem in transition to quote-unquote normal life?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I would say I'd be a liar if I told you anything different. I think most guys, I say, leave the league not because they do it on their own terms. It's because they're not offered a job. They're basically let go and nobody else wants them. And, that's pretty much what happens. And of course, sometimes it's injuries. Sometimes you get an injury you just can't overcome, and you can't play the game anymore. But more often than not, if you played a substantial amount or even just a couple of years, it's because nobody else wants you, not because you made a choice to retire and move on. I don't think anybody in their right mind, and trust me, I know a few of them that I don't think were in their right mind that left the game, prior than when they should have.
Yeah.
They just wanted to go do something else. And I'm like, are you crazy? But, so I basically couldn't find a job. Well, I had turf toe when I acquired turf toe in the preseason in San Diego. When you're playing on a baseball field, they want to keep the baseball field hard even though it's grass.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough in preseason when you're playing on a grass field that's also utilized as a baseball field. In order to keep the game fast in baseball, they want that field, even though it's grass, to be hard so that the ball bounces and goes. And in any event, I was running a route, and the guy, defensive back, as I caught the ball, shoved me in the back, and I jammed. You got to keep 2 feet down in order to make it a reception. So I'm trying to keep 2 feet down, and as I'm doing that, he shoves me, and I jam my foot into the turf, into the grass, and I busted my toe, which is they call the great toe. Ultimately, that's how you acquire turf toe.
Yeah.
And basically, you destroy the joint of your big toe.
Well, I think turf toe is what ended Jack Lambert's career.
Possibly. I'll tell you what, it's probably the worst injury I ever had. I ultimately played. They gave me this little pill every day as long as I took it. It was a heavy-duty anti-inflammatory called Indocin.
Yeah.
And if I took that little pill every morning with food, I could practice and I could play. But there was a time or two I forgot to take it, and I couldn't even jog if I didn't take this pill. But anyways, after the season, after my 92 season with the Rams, the doctors took me off it because they said it's not good for you to be on it too long. And your foot should foot should just heal up fine. Well, it didn't. It never got any better. And I ultimately went in and had surgery on it, probably in, I'm going to say, early March of 93. And they said, prognosis is good. We cleaned it out. Basically, they go and they open up that main joint, and it's a debrisement. They clean out all the, whatever debris is stuck in that joint that inflames it, put it back together. And anyways, I was behind my training schedule. I couldn't really get in shape. My turf toe never really healed properly. I went back into training camp, and there was no way I could make the football team in 93 with the Rams. They had to let me go, and rightfully so. I wasn't able to really perform at that level. So I sat out that year, and during that year that I was off, 93, my toe did heal. It actually healed up to where it didn't bother me anymore, but it took about a year from the time I had surgery. So I'd say about, February the next year, it felt good. So I started training again, thinking I could play in the NFL for somebody. I did have a few opportunities. I worked out with Miami Dolphins and Indianapolis Colts, and but it just didn't work out. Neither team. Well, I'll backtrack that. Indianapolis offered me a contract, but they offered me a 3-year minimum. And I told them, listen, that's 3 years is locking me up for 3 years. I probably won't play 2 years, but why don't you just offer me a 2-year? Just offer me a 2-year. I'll sign a 2-year minimum. And they said, forget it. We're not offering you anything.
Yeah.
I said, really? You just offered me a 3-year minimum and you won't take a 2-year? In fact, you're taking it off the table And they said, yeah, forget it. The offer's off the table. I'm like, okay, thanks for the workout. And after that, I went home and I said, I'm done with this. I can't handle this no more. I really thought I could play again, but wasn't in the works. So I retired after trying out, but I was off a year. So, that's a tough one to overcome when you're later on in your years as a wide receiver. It was a tough one to overcome anyways. So I just retired and said, I just got to move on with my life. And asked what I did afterwards. Well, I had a marketing degree from Grand Valley. So I thought, well, let's get into sales. So I got into my own small business, which was a ad specialty business, promotional items business. And at the time I was living in Orange County, California. So I opened up it was a home-based business initially, and I was actually doing pretty good in it. Being that I wasn't from that area, I didn't really have much of a name out there, but I got out there and hit the streets and had quite a few banks that I was working with and developed pretty good business. And then 911 hit. And right after 911 hit, after being in the business for 6 years or so, I lost probably 75% of my business overnight.
Yeah.
And I could not recoup that. That was a tough one. I ultimately lost that business. I had to shut that business down.
So
it was no longer a home-based business. Yeah, it was. I was responsible for an office and staff and all that kind of stuff, and I just.
So what are you doing today? Because I noticed you've got into something a little bit different over the last year or so.
Yeah, well, I did some coaching out there in California. Worked for a company called Adrenaline Athletics, teaching youngsters how to work out, train, and that was a good experience because I was actually part of the football aspect of the business and also doing some sales. So I did that for a couple of years. Worked with a couple of guys, Ivory Sully, who I'd played with, and Leonard Russell, who was actually played for the Patriots for a few years. He was managing the coaches over there. So I did that for a few years, and then I came back here to Michigan, probably 6 years ago. Found my way up north, kind of back to what I call my summer roots, where I'd spend summer times growing up as a kid, and I helped manage and maintain a small resort on a lake, Stevenson Lake.
Yeah.
So I do that and do some charity work. I work with Big Brothers Big Sisters. We actually had a function out here last summer where we'd done a fundraiser and raised some monies to bring out some former teammates of mine, and we had an activity day for Big Brothers Big Sisters. So we kind of shut down the cottages. We have a nice. First of all, we're on the lake, so that's awfully nice. But we also have a full stand volleyball court. We got horseshoes. We got a basketball.
I checked it out. It looked like a great place to take family.
Yeah. It's very much a family place. We have people that come here that will rent out all 4 cottages. We also have an additional cottage that we rent out for our neighbors. But sometimes we have families that their entire family comes out here and they occupy all the cottages, and they stay here for a week.
Yeah.
So it's makes for a nice vacation place for a lot of these families in the area, and but nonetheless, we have things that we do here. We'll do some charity things over here. Kristen, who's my girlfriend and partner, she's very much involved in the charity stuff, which is up my alley too. So we did this past year, we did ITP awareness, which is PDSA. It's a rare blood disorder. So rare that, I mean, most people, certainly before I got involved, never heard of it. But it's like a bleeding or blood disorder. They get these bruises on their bodies, and they retain water, and it all has to do with platelets and things of that nature. And it's not a government-funded disease or charity.
Yeah.
So they don't get any funding for anything. So we're helping out with that organization. I'm also working on right now, actually, working on getting a football camp out here to mid-Michigan. I've got Derek Hipple, George Jameson, Scott Conover, Luther Bradley, and Lomas Brown.
Lomas is a good guy. I had Lomas on about a year and a half ago. Lomas is a great guy.
Yeah, he's a good old boy. Lomas, yeah, he's great. He got 18 years in.
Yeah, he was in there a long time. I know that.
yeah, and he looks great. I just saw him not too long ago. He looks great. You'd think somebody who played that long in the league would be in a wheelchair. Not Lomas. Keeps himself in good shape. But yeah, he's doing well. And so we have this where I live now. It's considered to be Clare, Michigan. They have developed a sort of like a soccer complex.
Yeah.
Which has like 8 soccer fields of different sizes for the different age groups. It's called Emerald Isle. It's all through private donations and things of that nature, but they're not able to actually finish the project. They're kind of doing it in spurts, but they got the fields down. They got the grass fields down. But they have a plan for other things, a skate park and, bathrooms and all the amenities that a park like that would have. But in any event, I'm working on trying to do a football camp for 2 different age groups with these guys as well as myself. The only thing I'm missing right now is a former player who would coach the running backs. And then I would have all positions covered, with the exception of a kicking coach, which we're not going to cover that.
Yeah.
And then basically break it into 2 age groups. Try to hold this thing in July, and get these kids coached up. Prior to them going to their respective camps towards the end of July, beginning of August, when they start doing their training. Try to get their heads on right, get them prepared to get in there and make an impact.
Well, let's do this. If you get that set up and you're doing it this summer, maybe if you want, you can come on, for a little bit, a few weeks before that, and, we can push it a little bit for you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It's a lot of work. I mean, as you probably know, or been a part of anything like this, there's just so much that goes into it. It's, for me, I've got a marketing degree, so this stuff kind of makes sense to me. But I also know, there's things that, you have to rent out the field. You have to have the amenities. You have to have insurance. You have to do T-shirts. You have to get some sponsorship. You have to pay the players. There's a lot of expenses, and plus I want to do it to where, being that we have these players that, between the 7 of us, probably 75 years of NFL football playing experience, I think we have a lot to give to these kids. I want to make it affordable for them. So we're going to do a 2-day camp for $79.
Yeah, that's not bad. I've seen a lot worse.
And then offer lunch to one of the groups on each of the days, and do a signing for them. So that way we can, other than being on the field coaching them, we get to have a little luncheon with these kids after some, and do T-shirts and stuff like that. So I'm trying to make it a little bit more personal as opposed to, hey, just come in and pay and, spend the day out here, type of thing. And so there's a lot that goes into it. So I'm working on it. I know I don't have too much more time. I got to really get going on it here the next few weeks to get it out there. You got to then promote it. So you got to use your various vehicles, radio, newspapers, emails, school districts, social media, whatever, to get it out there to the, communities probably in a 100 or 60-mile radius.
Yeah. Well, once, like
and I know
if you get it set up,
that,
let us know. We can even have somebody set up to write an article for you about it a couple weeks ahead of time.
Yeah, that'd be great. Certainly anything would be helpful. But yeah, so between, working at the Sunset Shores, we're going to be busy here because we start, as soon as spring hits, we have to start getting this place up and running. And now we're still open in the winter time. It's just not the same.
Oh yeah,
because we have
really
a lot of gardens here. Well, it's cold. Everything's covered. But that's when you really get busy and you start getting your customers coming in, and there's a lot of upkeep and after going through a brutal winter, you've got cottages that need to be painted or stained or boards replaced. You know what I mean? Just upkeep, maintenance. So between that and the charity stuff and the football camp, it keeps me busy.
All right, Jeff. Well, it was great to have you on the show today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Hey, I appreciate you having me, and best luck to you. I'll have to check you guys out sometime.
Well, the same to you. And, we've interviewed, what are the Detroit Lions have I interviewed? I got to interview Lem Barney, which was really awesome. One of the great Lions of all time. Lomas Brown, yourself, Roger Brown. I don't know if you remember Roger Brown back from the 60s, but we've interviewed 4 or 5 Lions. But Roger Brown was on the original Fearsome Foursome with Deacon Jones and them.
Oh, okay.
And then he went to the Browns and played with Alex Karras.
Okay. Yeah, well, I certainly remember some of those guys. That was Alex Karras and them. But on my Facebook, I have a picture of me and Lem Barney. That's on my Facebook.
Oh, Lem Barney's a great guy.
Yeah, he's great. He's always been a big fan favorite. He still shows up to all the games. I go to a couple of the games, but I think he's pretty much at every game. He and his wife, and he's just a great guy. Gotta love Lem Barney.
All right, Jeff. Once again, I want to thank you. You're welcome back anytime. Maybe we get you on, like I said, to promote your camp a little bit, but I really appreciate you coming on. I want to remind people that I will be back at noon Eastern with Steve Risley, 1981 national champion, as we do our Survive in Advance show. We'll have Brian Ralph from Busting Brackets and Fansided on to talk a little college basketball, which been a lot of news over the last few days. I want to remind everybody you can hear all of our shows on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, wherever you find sports podcasts. You'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Jeff Chadwick, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.